Welcome to a chapter a day. There is a lie that quietly controls millions of lives. The lie says you must choose. Choose ambition or peace. Choose success or love. Choose independence or connection. Choose protecting yourself or opening your heart. But what if the real power was never found in extremes? What if the strongest people are not the ones who isolate themselves from the world, and not the ones who abandon themselves to please everyone else, but the ones who learn how to stay rooted within themselves while still building meaningful relationships, powerful visions, abundant lives, and purposeful futures? Think about that for a moment. Because most people are exhausted not because life is hard, but because they are living out of balance. Some people lose themselves trying to be loved. Others lose love trying to protect themselves. Some chase success so aggressively they destroy their peace. Others cling to comfort so tightly they abandon their potential. And slowly, the soul fractures. But there is another path, a sacred balance, a way to build without breaking yourself, a way to love without disappearing, a way to manifest abundance without worshiping outcomes, a way to lead, create, connect, and expand without losing who you are. And here is something most people never realize. Manifestation was never delayed. The delay was created by internal conflict. The moment your identity, emotions, beliefs, and direction become aligned, your reality begins responding differently. Not someday. Now, this audiobook is not about becoming someone else. It is about returning to the version of yourself that was never meant to live divided. Over the next 2 hours, you are going to uncover the hidden psychological patterns, emotional traps, spiritual distortions, and subconscious contradictions that keep people disconnected from peace, power, clarity, relationships, and abundance. And by the end of this journey, you will no longer feel forced to choose between protecting your soul and pursuing your purpose. You will understand how to master both, because balance is not weakness. Balance is the highest form of power. Chapter 1. Stop worshiping extremes. There is something strange about the modern world. It constantly pushes people toward extremes, and then calls those extremes strength. Think about it. A person isolates themselves emotionally, and the world says they are independent. A person overworks themselves until exhaustion, and the world says they are ambitious. A person sacrifices their own needs to keep everyone happy, and the world says they are loving. A person suppresses emotion, disconnects from vulnerability, and avoids intimacy, and the world calls them disciplined. But pause for a moment and think about this. What if many of the behaviors society praises are actually symptoms of imbalance? What if people are not becoming stronger, but simply becoming more disconnected from themselves? This is one of the deepest misunderstandings in human life, because imbalance often disguises itself as identity. And once imbalance becomes identity, people protect it without realizing it is hurting them. Some people become addicted to hyper-independence. They tell themselves, "I do not need anyone. I handle everything alone. I trust myself more than people. I cannot afford to rely on others." And on the surface, this can look powerful. But underneath that independence is often something much quieter. Fear. Fear of disappointment. Fear of betrayal. Fear of vulnerability. Fear of depending on people who may not stay. So the mind creates a solution. Isolation. Not because isolation feels good, but because it feels safer than uncertainty. Now think about the opposite extreme. Some people become addicted to overgiving. They constantly help others, constantly sacrifice themselves, constantly say yes when they want to say no, constantly carry emotional weight that was never theirs to hold. And again, society praises this. People call them selfless, kind, loving, reliable. But here is the hidden truth most people never stop to examine. Sometimes overgiving is not love. Sometimes it is fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of abandonment. Fear of conflict. Fear that if they stop performing for others, they may no longer feel valuable. So once again, imbalance becomes identity. And because the behavior receives approval from the outside world, the person never questions the internal damage it creates. Now here is where things become even deeper. The same thing happens with ambition. Many people worship productivity because slowing down forces them to confront themselves. Have you noticed that? Some people cannot rest without guilt, cannot sit in silence comfortably, cannot stop achieving long enough to ask themselves who they are beneath performance. So they stay busy, not because movement always means purpose, but because movement distracts them from emotional discomfort. And eventually they confuse exhaustion for meaning. Pause for a moment and ask yourself something honestly. What have you been overcorrecting for? Really think about that. Because every extreme usually begins as a reaction to pain. A person who felt powerless becomes controlling. A person who felt abandoned becomes emotionally guarded. A person who felt unseen becomes addicted to achievement. A person who felt unloved becomes addicted to pleasing everyone else. And slowly, the personality forms around protection. This is why many people no longer know who they are outside their coping mechanisms. And here is the psychological plot twist most people never see coming. Many strong people are not operating from power. They are operating from fear that has become organized. Think about how profound that really is. A person can look disciplined while secretly terrified of slowing down. A person can look independent while secretly terrified of trusting people. A person can look successful while secretly terrified of feeling insignificant. A person can look spiritually evolved while secretly avoiding reality. This is why extremes feel emotionally addictive, because extremes remove uncertainty. Isolation removes the uncertainty of intimacy. Perfectionism removes the uncertainty of imperfection. People-pleasing removes the uncertainty of rejection. Control removes the uncertainty of surrender. The mind loves certainty, even unhealthy certainty. And that is why healing feels uncomfortable at first. Because balance requires presence. Balance requires awareness. Balance requires emotional honesty. Extremes are easier because they simplify life into survival patterns. But balance asks something greater from you. Balance asks you to remain open without losing yourself, driven without destroying your peace, connected without becoming dependent, confident without becoming arrogant, protective of your energy without hardening your heart. And this is where manifestation becomes deeply misunderstood. Most people think manifestation is mainly about thoughts, affirmations, techniques, or visualization. But manifestation responds most powerfully to identity, to coherence, to internal agreement. And a divided mind cannot create a unified reality. Let that sink in. A divided mind cannot create a unified reality. If one part of you desires love, while another part fears intimacy, you create emotional contradiction. If one part of you desires abundance, while another part believes success will destroy your peace, you create subconscious resistance. If one part of you wants expansion, while another part fears visibility, your energy remains conflicted. This is why so many people feel stuck. Not because life is against them, but because internally they are moving in opposite directions. One side of the self wants growth. Another side wants protection. One side wants change. Another side fears uncertainty. And until those internal contradictions are understood, manifestation feels delayed. But the delay is not punishment. The delay is division. Think about how often people say they want peace while building lifestyles that destroy their nervous systems. Think about how often people say they want love while refusing vulnerability. Think about how often people say they want purpose while constantly abandoning themselves for approval. The outer reality mirrors the inner condition. Always. This is why balance is not weakness. Balance is alignment. and alignment is power. The most powerful people are not the loudest people, not the busiest people, not the most emotionally detached people. The most powerful people are internally rooted. They are not constantly abandoning themselves to survive environments. They do not need extremes to feel safe. They can exist in uncertainty without collapsing. And that changes everything. Because when a person becomes internally rooted, they stop reacting to life from emotional survival mode. They begin choosing consciously. They stop chasing validation. Stop over-explaining themselves. Stop proving their worth constantly. Stop performing identities built from old wounds. And slowly, peace returns. Not temporary peace. Real peace. The kind that exists even while building goals. Even while pursuing purpose. Even while navigating relationships and uncertainty. Now here is something important to understand. Balance does not mean passivity. It does not mean becoming emotionless. It does not mean losing ambition. It does not mean avoiding intensity. Balance means your center remains intact while life moves around you. That is real strength. A tree survives storms not because it resists movement entirely, but because its roots are deep enough to remain grounded while the winds shift. And people are no different. Without roots, success destabilizes people. Relationships destabilize people. Criticism destabilizes people. Failure destabilizes people. But rooted people move differently. They remain connected to themselves regardless of circumstances. And that is why this chapter matters so deeply. Because before you can build healthy relationships, before you can manifest clearly, before you can pursue purpose sustainably, you must first stop worshiping the extremes that are dividing you internally. You must stop confusing survival patterns for identity. You must stop glorifying emotional imbalance simply because the world rewards it temporarily. And perhaps most importantly, you must become willing to ask yourself a difficult question. What if some of the traits you are proudest of are actually survival mechanisms? What if your independence came from disappointment? What if your overachievement came from insecurity? What if your emotional distance came from fear? What if your constant giving came from a belief that love must be earned? Pause for a moment and sit with that honestly, because awareness is the beginning of balance, and balance is the beginning of transformation. You cannot build a peaceful life from a divided identity. You cannot manifest wholeness while abandoning parts of yourself internally. The sacred balance begins the moment you stop living in emotional extremes and start living in conscious alignment. And now that you understand how imbalance disguises itself as strength, the next question becomes unavoidable. If people have spent years abandoning themselves unconsciously, how do they begin reclaiming themselves again? That is where we go next. Because the greatest loss in life is not failure. It is forgetting who you are while trying to survive. Chapter 2. The hidden cost of losing yourself. Have you ever stayed silent just to keep peace? Think about that carefully. Not because you agreed. Not because it felt right. Not because your soul was calm about the situation. But because speaking honestly felt uncomfortable. So instead, you swallowed your truth. Most people do not realize how often they abandon themselves in small moments. And that is the danger. Because self-abandonment rarely looks dramatic in the beginning. Usually it looks normal. It looks like saying yes when your spirit wants to say no. It looks like staying in environments that drain you because leaving would disappoint people. It looks like shrinking your personality to fit into rooms where authenticity feels unsafe. It looks like pretending to be okay because expressing pain feels inconvenient to others. And over time, these moments accumulate. One compromise becomes 10. 10 become a lifestyle. And eventually the person no longer recognizes themselves clearly. This is one of the quietest forms of suffering in human life. Losing yourself gradually. Not all at once. Think about how many people are living lives that were built almost entirely around external expectations. Family expectations, social expectations, relationship expectations, cultural expectations, professional expectations. And somewhere along the way, they stopped asking themselves a very important question. What do I actually feel? Not what looks right, not what sounds impressive, not what gains approval, but what genuinely feels aligned within. Because many people are successful publicly while disconnected privately, and the world rarely notices the difference. A person can smile while emotionally exhausted, achieve while spiritually disconnected, provide for everyone else while silently abandoning themselves every day. This is why some people reach goals they spent years chasing, only to feel empty when they arrive. Because the soul knows when success was built through self-betrayal. Pause for a moment and think about your own life honestly. How many decisions were truly yours? Really think about that. How many paths did you choose because they reflected your authentic desires? And how many were chosen because they earned approval, safety, validation, or belonging? This is where self-abandonment becomes dangerous. Because the more disconnected people become from themselves internally, the harder it becomes to hear intuition clearly. And intuition matters more than most people realize. Your intuition is not random emotion. It is internal guidance. It is the subtle awareness that recognizes misalignment before the conscious mind fully understands it. But every time you ignore it repeatedly, something begins happening beneath the surface. Trust weakens. Not trust in others. Trust in yourself. And once self-trust weakens, confusion increases. This is why people begin second-guessing themselves constantly, why they overanalyze simple decisions, why they seek endless external validation, why they feel disconnected from clarity. Because internally, the subconscious has learned something dangerous. It has learned that your own signals will not be honored consistently, and this creates energetic self-abandonment. Now, this concept goes deeper than psychology. Energetic self-abandonment happens when your actions repeatedly contradict your inner truth. When your soul says, "This relationship is draining you," but you stay. When your intuition says, "You are forcing this path," but you continue anyway. When your emotions say, "You need rest," but you ignore yourself to maintain performance. Every time this happens, the subconscious absorbs a message. My truth is not safe to follow. And eventually, identity becomes unstable. This is why manifestation weakens when self-abandonment becomes chronic. Because manifestation requires internal coherence, a stable identity, a clear energetic signal. But every time you betray yourself, your energy learns confusion. Let that settle deeply. Every time you betray yourself, your energy learns confusion. And confusion creates fragmentation. One part of you wants expansion. Another part distrusts your own decisions. One part wants love. Another part expects disappointment. One part wants peace. Another part keeps choosing environments that destroy it. This internal contradiction sends mixed signals into every area of life. And slowly, people begin living disconnected from their own center. Now, here is something strange about human beings. Most people can recognize when someone else is abandoning themselves. They can see it clearly in friends, in family members, in relationships. They notice when someone tolerates disrespect, overextends themselves constantly, suppresses their voice, loses their individuality trying to maintain connection. But when people do it to themselves, they rationalize it. They call it responsibility, loyalty, sacrifice, patience, maturity. And sometimes those things are genuine. But sometimes they are simply fear wearing noble clothing. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of losing relationships. Fear of standing alone. So people slowly disconnect from themselves to maintain temporary emotional safety. But here is the paradox. The more disconnected a person becomes from themselves, the less peaceful their life feels, even if externally things appear stable. This is why some people constantly feel emotionally tired around certain environments. Their nervous system is exhausted from maintaining a version of themselves that is not fully authentic. Think about how draining it is to constantly suppress your truth, to monitor your personality, to over-edit your emotions, to avoid conflict at the expense of honesty, to become who everyone else needs while forgetting yourself in the process. That exhaustion is not weakness. It is internal misalignment, and the body always feels misalignment eventually. This is why some people feel relief the moment they finally become honest, even before circumstances change, because truth reconnects energy. Truth restores internal coherence. Truth rebuilds self-trust. Now, this does not mean becoming harsh, reactive, or selfish. That is another misunderstanding. Many people fear authenticity because they confuse honesty with aggression. But authentic people do not need to dominate others. They simply stop abandoning themselves to maintain acceptance. There is a difference, a very important difference. And here is the deeper realization most people eventually reach. The people who genuinely love you do not require your self-destruction. Healthy relationships do not demand chronic self-abandonment. Healthy environments do not require emotional shrinking. Healthy success does not cost your soul. But wounded systems often normalize imbalance. Families normalize silence. Workplaces normalize burnout. Relationships normalize emotional inconsistency. Society normalizes disconnection. And because the dysfunction becomes familiar, people stop questioning it. Until one day they wake up emotionally exhausted and wonder why they no longer feel connected to themselves. Pause for a moment and reflect honestly. Where in your life have you been abandoning yourself repeatedly? Not dramatically, subtly. Where have you been saying yes without alignment? Where have you been tolerating what drains you? Where have you been silencing your intuition? Where have you been performing instead of living authentically? These questions matter because awareness is the first step back toward yourself. And returning to yourself changes everything. Your decisions become clearer. Your relationships become healthier. Your energy becomes more stable. Your manifestations become more aligned. Because now your inner world is no longer divided against itself constantly. Now here is a powerful shift that can transform your life. Start measuring success differently. Not only by money, not only by status, not only by productivity or approval. Start measuring success by how connected you remain to yourself. That changes everything. Can you pursue ambition without abandoning your peace? Can you love others without losing your identity? Can you help people without emotionally collapsing? Can you grow without disconnecting from your intuition? That is real mastery. Because external success means very little if internally you feel fragmented. The sacred balance is not about becoming less caring. It is about caring without self-erasure. It is about remaining rooted within yourself while still connecting deeply with others. And this realization becomes life-changing once it fully settles into the mind. You do not need to abandon yourself to be loved. You do not need to betray your intuition to belong. You do not need to exhaust yourself to prove your worth. You were never meant to disappear inside your own life. And perhaps that is the greatest tragedy for many people. Not failure, not rejection, but slowly becoming strangers to themselves. Yet the moment awareness returns, the rebuilding begins. Self-trust can return, clarity can return, alignment can return. But first, you must become honest enough to recognize where you have been disconnecting from yourself unconsciously. Because the problem was never that you cared about others. The problem was forgetting yourself while doing it. And once a person begins reclaiming themselves internally, another challenge appears immediately. How do you protect your energy without becoming emotionally closed? How do you remain open to connection without losing your center again? That is where we go next. Chapter 3. Protect your energy without closing your heart. There is a phrase people repeat constantly in modern culture. Protect your energy. And on the surface, that sounds wise. But many people misunderstand what protection actually means. Because somewhere along the way, emotional shutdown became confused with strength. Distance became confused with peace. Avoidance became confused with healing. Numbness became confused with control. And now there are countless people walking through life emotionally guarded, believing they are finally safe, while internally they still feel exhausted. Why do emotionally guarded people often feel spiritually exhausted? Pause for a moment and really think about that. Because if emotional walls truly created peace, then emotionally unavailable people would feel deeply fulfilled. But many do not. Many feel disconnected, detached, lonely, emotionally heavy. And the reason is simple. Closing your heart is not the same as protecting your soul. That distinction changes everything. Many people build emotional walls after disappointment, after betrayal, after rejection, after abandonment, after giving too much of themselves to people who did not value them properly. And initially, those walls feel empowering. The person says, "I will never let anyone hurt me again. I do not need anybody. I am better off alone. I stopped caring." But beneath those statements is often unresolved pain disguised as independence. Because emotional shutdown is not always peace. Sometimes it is grief that learned how to hide. Sometimes it is fear pretending to be strength. And this is important to understand because unresolved pain changes how people relate to the world. A wounded person often mistakes emotional distance for emotional maturity. But maturity is not emotional absence. Maturity is emotional stability. There is a difference, a massive difference. One person disconnects because they fear vulnerability. Another remains open while maintaining self-respect, discernment, and internal grounding. Only one of those people is truly free. Think about how many people have convinced themselves that becoming colder means becoming stronger. Yet internally, they still carry the same fears. Fear of rejection, fear of disappointment, fear of emotional exposure. The walls changed, but the wounds remained untouched. This is why emotional avoidance never creates lasting peace. Avoidance only delays confrontation. Sooner or later, the soul still demands healing. And this leads us into one of the most important realizations in this entire audiobook. True boundaries are not emotional distance. True boundaries are internal stability. Let that settle deeply. Most people think boundaries mean pushing everyone away. But healthy boundaries are not about becoming unreachable. They are about remaining connected to yourself while interacting with others. That is the difference. Because people who lack internal stability often become emotionally absorbent. They absorb moods, absorb pressure, absorb expectations, absorb emotional chaos from everyone around them. And after enough emotional overload, they swing to the opposite extreme. They shut down completely. But neither extreme creates balance. Overexposure creates depletion. Complete shutdown creates isolation. The sacred balance exists in the middle. Protection without isolation. Openness without collapse. Repeat that within yourself slowly. Protection without isolation. Openness without collapse. That is real emotional mastery. Now here is something strange about human beings. Many people never learned healthy emotional boundaries growing up. Some were taught that saying no was selfish. Some were taught to suppress emotions to avoid conflict. Some were taught that vulnerability created danger. Some were taught that love required self-sacrifice. So naturally, they entered adulthood without understanding how to stay emotionally open while still remaining internally protected. Instead, they learned survival patterns, people-pleasing, emotional detachment, hyperindependence, emotional suppression. But survival patterns are not the same as healing. Pause for a moment and reflect honestly. Who taught you that vulnerability was dangerous? Was it disappointment? A relationship? Childhood experiences? A betrayal you never fully healed from? Because the answer to that question often explains why people either cling too tightly or emotionally disappear. And both patterns come from the same root: fear. Fear of pain. Now here is the paradox most people eventually discover. The more emotionally closed a person becomes, the less alive they feel. Because human beings were not designed only for protection. They were also designed for connection. Meaningful connection. Authentic expression. Shared experiences. Love. Trust. Presence. But connection becomes dangerous when a person loses themselves inside it. That is why internal grounding matters so deeply. A grounded person can love without dissolving their identity, can care without carrying everyone emotionally, can remain compassionate without abandoning boundaries. This is the difference between empathy and emotional absorption. Empathy understands emotion. Absorption becomes consumed by it. And many sensitive people confuse the two. They believe protecting their peace requires disconnecting from humanity entirely. But the strongest souls remain soft without becoming weak. Think about that carefully. The strongest souls remain soft without becoming weak. Water is soft, yet powerful enough to shape entire landscapes. Trees bend with storms, yet remain rooted. Nature itself demonstrates balance constantly. Only human beings glorify emotional extremes. Now let us go even deeper. Many people secretly fear openness because openness removes control. When the heart is open, uncertainty exists. People may disappoint you, misunderstand you, leave you, fail you, and the ego hates uncertainty. So it creates defenses, distance, detachment, emotional armor. Not because these things create peace, but because they temporarily reduce vulnerability. Yet something important gets lost in the process. Presence. Emotionally guarded people often struggle to fully experience life. Not because life stopped offering beauty, but because self-protection reduced emotional access. Think about how many people say, "I do not care anymore," but internally, they still do care. They simply no longer feel safe expressing it openly. That is not freedom. Freedom is being emotionally honest without becoming emotionally controlled. Freedom is being able to love deeply without abandoning self-respect. Freedom is being able to connect without losing inner stability. And this brings us to another realization many people need to hear. Healthy boundaries are energetic before they are verbal. A person who is internally grounded radiates clarity naturally. They do not constantly need to over-explain themselves, over-defend themselves, over-protect themselves. Their energy communicates stability, and stable energy changes relationships completely. Because emotionally grounded people stop participating in chaotic emotional patterns unconsciously. They stop chasing unavailable people. Stop overextending themselves constantly. Stop trying to rescue everyone. Stop tolerating repeated disrespect to avoid loneliness. Not because they stopped caring, but because they finally started valuing themselves too. This is where true protection begins. Not through emotional shutdown, but through self-connection. A connected person notices misalignment faster, notices emotional exhaustion faster, notices manipulation faster, notices environments that disrupt peace faster. And because they trust themselves internally, they respond earlier instead of abandoning themselves repeatedly. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself something honestly. Have your emotional walls actually brought you peace, or simply distance? That question matters deeply, because many people are not protecting peace. They are protecting pain from being touched again. But healing requires more than protection. It requires conscious reconnection, not reckless openness, not blind trust. Conscious openness, the ability to remain emotionally available while still remaining rooted within yourself. That is balance, and balance changes the entire experience of relationships, manifestation, and life itself. Because emotionally grounded people stop relating to the world from fear constantly. They stop asking, "How do I avoid pain completely?" and start asking, "How do I remain connected to myself no matter what happens?" That question transforms everything. Because now life is no longer about building perfect emotional armor. It becomes about building inner stability. And stable people move differently through life. They do not collapse every time disappointment appears. Do not lose themselves inside relationships. Do not harden themselves after every painful experience. They feel deeply while remaining rooted deeply. And that is rare, very rare, especially in a world teaching people either emotional dependence or emotional avoidance. But the sacred balance requires neither extreme. It asks something greater: protection without isolation, openness without collapse. And once a person truly understands that, relationships begin changing naturally. Manifestation changes naturally. Peace changes naturally. Because the nervous system no longer lives in constant defense mode. Now here is the deeper realization hiding underneath this entire chapter. Maybe connection itself was never the real danger. Maybe the pain came from disconnecting from yourself during connection. Think about that carefully. Maybe relationships hurt so deeply because people abandoned their intuition to maintain them. Maybe exhaustion happened because boundaries disappeared. Maybe heartbreak shattered identity because identity became attached entirely to another person. The pain was not always caused by caring. Sometimes the pain was caused by self-abandonment within connection. And that realization changes everything. Because now healing is no longer about becoming colder. It becomes about becoming more rooted, more aware, more internally stable, more connected to yourself while still remaining open to life. And once emotional stability begins forming internally, another profound shift becomes possible. You stop waiting for life to change externally before feeling whole internally. Which brings us to the next transformation. Because what if manifestation itself has been misunderstood from the beginning? What if the delay people experience is not actually time, but internal contradiction? Chapter 4. Manifestation has no delay. There is one belief that quietly controls the manifestation journey of millions of people. A belief repeated so often, it has become accepted as truth without being questioned deeply. The belief says this: manifestation always requires waiting. People say, be patient. It takes time. There is always a delay. The universe is testing you. Your manifestation is coming someday. And while patience certainly has value, here is the deeper question very few people stop to ask. What if time lag is not universal law, but emotional interference? Pause for a moment and truly think about that. Because the moment this realization begins settling into the mind, manifestation starts looking completely different. Now, this does not mean every desire appears instantly in physical form. That is not the point. The deeper point is this: many delays people experience are not caused by time itself. They are caused by internal contradiction. And until that contradiction is understood, people remain trapped in cycles of waiting, hoping, forcing, and doubting. Think about how many people spend years saying they want abundance, while internally believing they are unworthy of receiving it. Or how many people say they desire love, while emotionally expecting disappointment. Or how many people claim they want peace, while living in constant emotional chaos internally. The conscious mind asks for one thing. The subconscious identity believes another. And manifestation responds more strongly to identity than temporary desire. This is why some people visualize constantly but still feel stuck. Because visualization without internal coherence creates conflict. One part of the self says, "It is possible." Another part quietly whispers, "But not for me." And that whisper matters more than most people realize. Because your reality responds to what feels real within you. Repeat that slowly. Your reality responds to what feels real within you. Not merely what sounds good intellectually. Not merely what you repeat verbally. Not merely what you wish for emotionally in moments of inspiration. Reality responds to what your nervous system, subconscious mind, emotional state, and identity have accepted as true. And this changes the entire conversation around manifestation. Because manifestation is not mainly about attracting something external. It is about embodying internal alignment. Think about how powerful that realization actually is. Most people approach manifestation from emotional separation. They say, "I want abundance because I do not have enough. I want love because I feel incomplete. I want success because I feel insignificant. I want validation because I do not feel worthy." And while the desires themselves are understandable, the emotional state underneath them matters deeply. Because constantly wanting from emptiness reinforces emptiness. Constantly chasing from lack reinforces lack. And here is the psychological plot twist most people never notice. Constantly waiting reinforces the identity of not having. Pause and let that settle fully. If a person spends every day emotionally affirming, "It is coming someday," the subconscious absorbs a hidden message. It is not here now. And eventually waiting becomes identity. People become emotionally attached to anticipation instead of embodiment. They remain psychologically separate from the life they desire. Now again, this does not mean physical reality changes instantly every moment a thought appears. But internal reality shifts immediately when identity shifts. And internal reality shapes behavior, energy, confidence, perception, opportunities, decisions, and emotional frequency faster than most people realize. Think about how differently a grounded person moves through life compared to a fearful person. The grounded person speaks differently, decides differently, responds differently, carries themselves differently, notices different opportunities. Why? Because identity changed first. This is why manifestation is deeply connected to embodiment. Not performance, not pretending. Embodiment. The difference matters. Pretending says, "I hope this becomes true eventually." Embodiment says, "This is becoming natural within me now." That emotional shift changes everything. Now let us go deeper. Many people unknowingly interrupt manifestation through subconscious contradiction. For example, a person desires financial abundance, but secretly associates wealth with stress, corruption, or loss of peace. So one side of the mind wants money. Another side fears what money represents emotionally. And the subconscious conflict creates hesitation. Or a person desires healthy love, but their nervous system associates intimacy with pain. So they unconsciously attract emotionally unavailable dynamics while consciously asking for connection. Again, contradiction. This is why manifestation cannot be understood only through surface-level positivity. The deeper work is identity integration. The alignment of thoughts, emotions, beliefs, nervous system responses, and self-concept. Because a divided identity creates divided outcomes. And this explains why some people receive opportunities, but sabotage them emotionally. Why some people meet aligned relationships, but cannot sustain them. Why some people achieve success externally, but still feel internally disconnected. The external manifestation arrived, but the identity was not fully prepared to hold it peacefully. Now here is another realization most people overlook. Manifestation is not only about what you desire. It is also about what you normalize emotionally. Think about that carefully. If chaos feels emotionally familiar, peace may initially feel uncomfortable. If struggle feels familiar, ease may feel suspicious. If emotional inconsistency feels familiar, healthy stability may feel boring. The nervous system often gravitates toward familiarity before alignment. And this is why healing becomes essential to manifestation. Not because healing makes you perfect, but because healing reduces internal contradiction. Healing reconnects you to wholeness, and wholeness stabilizes energy. This is why emotionally aligned people often manifest differently. Not because they control the universe magically, but because their inner world sends a clearer signal consistently. Their identity is less divided. Their actions match their intentions more closely. Their nervous system is not constantly fighting itself internally. And slowly, reality begins reflecting that coherence outwardly. Now pause for a moment and reflect honestly. How often have you emotionally practiced not having what you desire? Think about it. How often have you checked constantly for signs? Questioned timing? Doubted yourself? Looked for evidence something was missing? That emotional pattern matters. Because where attention repeatedly goes, identity quietly follows. And this is why desperation weakens manifestation. Desperation places emotional focus on absence constantly. But aligned energy feels different. Aligned energy is calm, grounded, open, certain without forcing. Now, certainty does not mean arrogance. It does not mean pretending challenges do not exist. It means your internal state is no longer begging reality for permission to feel whole. That distinction changes everything, because wholeness is magnetic. A person who already feels deeply connected to themselves moves differently through life. They no longer chase validation desperately, no longer force outcomes obsessively, no longer collapse emotionally every time uncertainty appears. And paradoxically, this often creates greater external alignment. Why? Because emotional resistance decreases. Fear decreases. Internal conflict decreases. Now here is an important coaching moment. Practice acting from emotional wholeness instead of emotional desperation. That does not mean becoming passive. It means changing the emotional foundation underneath your actions. Work from inspiration, not panic. Build relationships from connection, not emptiness. Pursue goals from vision, not insecurity. The energy underneath behavior matters more than most people realize. Because two people can perform identical actions externally while internally operating from completely different identities. One person works from fear of failure. Another works from purpose. One person seeks love from emotional emptiness. Another shares love from internal fullness. And reality responds differently to each state. Now here is another strange truth about manifestation. Many people unknowingly worship future versions of themselves while rejecting their present selves. They say, "I will finally feel worthy when. I will finally feel peaceful when. I will finally feel confident when." But this keeps wholeness permanently postponed. And postponed wholeness creates emotional dependency on outcomes. The sacred balance teaches something radically different. It teaches that inner alignment begins now, not someday, now, because your identity is being practiced every day whether you realize it or not. Every thought reinforces identity. Every emotional reaction reinforces identity. Every repeated behavior reinforces identity. And slowly reality organizes around what becomes emotionally familiar. So the goal is not merely to force manifestations externally. The deeper goal is to become internally coherent, to become someone whose thoughts, emotions, actions, and self-concept move in the same direction. That is power. And once coherence forms internally, life begins responding differently naturally. Not because you became someone fake, but because resistance stopped interrupting your own energy constantly. Now think about this carefully. If fear disappeared completely tomorrow, how differently would you move through life immediately? how differently would you speak? Choose, love, create, lead, build. That shift alone reveals something profound. Identity shapes reality faster than circumstances do. Because identity determines perception, action, emotional state, and energetic presence continuously. Which means manifestation is not only about changing the future. It is about changing the self that experiences the future. And once a person understands this deeply, waiting begins dissolving. Because now manifestation is no longer treated like a distant event. It becomes an unfolding reflection of internal alignment happening in real time. The person stops obsessing over timelines and starts focusing on coherence. Stops forcing. Stops begging. Stops emotionally separating themselves from the life they desire. And instead, they begin embodying, calmly, consciously, consistently, because your reality responds to what feels real within you. And this leads us into another important realization. If identity shapes manifestation so deeply, then confidence itself must be understood differently too. Because many people appear confident externally, while secretly depending on validation internally. And that distinction changes everything. Chapter 5. Build confidence without ego. There is a major difference between confidence and performance, but most people never learn the distinction, because the modern world rewards visibility more than inner stability. It rewards attention, recognition, status, image, external proof. And because of this, many people spend years building versions of themselves designed to appear powerful, while internally still feeling uncertain. This is where ego quietly enters the picture. Now, ego is often misunderstood. Some people think ego only appears as arrogance, but ego can appear in many forms. Comparison, overcompensation, attention-seeking, constant proving, the inability to accept criticism, the obsession with appearing important. Even perfectionism can become ego when identity depends on performance. And here is the difficult truth many people avoid confronting. Sometimes ambition is not driven by purpose. Sometimes it is driven by emotional hunger. Pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, how much of your ambition is actually a request for validation? Think deeply about that, because many people are not chasing goals. They are chasing emotional permission to feel worthy. I will finally feel enough when I achieve this. I will finally feel respected when people recognize me. I will finally feel valuable when I succeed publicly. And while achievement itself is not wrong, building identity entirely around external confirmation creates instability. Because anything dependent on external approval becomes emotionally fragile. This is why some highly successful people still feel deeply insecure. Their accomplishments expanded, but their self-worth never stabilized internally. So no achievement ever feels like enough. There is always another goal, another audience, another comparison, another level of recognition needed to temporarily quiet the inner emptiness. And this reveals one of the hidden mechanisms of ego. Ego becomes addictive because approval temporarily numbs internal emptiness. But only temporarily. That is why validation never fully satisfies the ego for long. The emotional relief fades quickly, and then the mind searches for more. More recognition, more proof, more applause, more superiority, more external confirmation. This is why some people become trapped in endless cycles of overachievement. Not because they genuinely love growth, but because stillness forces them to confront unresolved insecurity. Now, this is important to understand carefully. Achievement itself is not the problem. Ambition itself is not the problem. The deeper question is this: who are you without the applause? Because confidence and ego behave very differently in silence. Ego needs witnesses. Confidence remains stable in silence. Repeat that slowly within yourself. Ego needs witnesses. Confidence remains stable in silence. That distinction changes everything. A confident person does not collapse when attention disappears, does not require constant reassurance, does not need to dominate every room, does not depend entirely on comparison to feel significant, because their identity is internally rooted. Now compare that to ego-driven identity. An ego-driven person often feels emotionally threatened by the success of others. Why? Because comparison activates insecurity. If worth depends on being superior, then someone else shining feels dangerous. But grounded confidence does not operate that way. Grounded people can admire others without feeling diminished, because their value is not dependent on competition constantly. This is one of the clearest signs of emotional maturity. Now let us go deeper. Many people secretly build personalities around compensation. A person who felt powerless may become controlling. A person who felt invisible may become attention-seeking. A person who felt inadequate may become obsessed with achievement. A person who felt emotionally unsafe may build intellectual superiority as protection. And often, these patterns become normalized, even celebrated. Society frequently rewards overcompensation because overcompensation can produce visible success. But internally, the nervous system remains restless. Think about how exhausting it is to constantly perform worthiness, to constantly prove yourself, defend your intelligence, protect your image, maintain status, seek validation. That is not freedom. That is emotional labor. And eventually the soul becomes tired of performing. This is why some people experience emotional emptiness even after achieving major goals. Because external success cannot permanently heal internal disconnection. Only self-connection can do that. Now pause for a moment and reflect honestly. When do you feel most valuable? Really think about that. Do you feel valuable only when productive? Only when praised? Only when needed? Only when admired? Because the answer reveals where identity may still be externally attached. An externally attached identity always creates emotional instability eventually. Why? Because life changes constantly. People change. Attention changes. Circumstances change. Outcomes change. So if worth depends entirely on outcomes, peace becomes impossible to sustain. This is why true confidence is deeply quiet. Not weak. Quiet. There is a calmness to grounded people. They do not constantly need to convince others of their importance. The most powerful presence in the room rarely needs to announce itself. Think about that carefully. The most powerful presence in the room rarely needs to announce itself. Because true confidence does not need constant confirmation. That phrase matters deeply. True confidence does not need constant confirmation. Now, this does not mean confident people never appreciate recognition. Of course they do. Human beings naturally enjoy appreciation and acknowledgement. The difference is this. Recognition becomes a bonus, not a requirement for self-worth. That distinction creates emotional freedom. Now here is something many people never notice. Ego often becomes louder when insecurity becomes deeper. A person who constantly exaggerates themselves may secretly feel unseen internally. A person obsessed with superiority may secretly fear inadequacy. A person desperate to appear successful may secretly feel emotionally empty. Again, performance and confidence are not the same thing. And this explains why some people appear outwardly dominant while inwardly fragile. The identity is being maintained through force instead of stability. Now let us look at another subtle form of ego, spiritual ego. This happens when people become attached to appearing evolved, enlightened, healed, or superior morally. And ironically, this creates another form of disconnection. Because authenticity disappears once identity becomes dependent on appearing advanced constantly. True growth is not performance. True growth creates humility. A grounded person no longer needs to appear perfect to feel worthy. That is real strength. The ability to remain secure while still remaining human. Now here is another important realization. Confidence grows naturally when self-trust grows. And self-trust grows when actions align with inner truth consistently. Every time you honor your boundaries, self-trust deepens. Every time you keep promises to yourself, self-trust deepens. Every time you stop abandoning yourself for approval, confidence stabilizes. This is why real confidence cannot be faked permanently. Because real confidence is energetic coherence. The mind, emotions, actions, and identity moving together honestly. And when that alignment develops, something powerful happens. The need for excessive validation begins weakening naturally. Not because you stop caring about people, but because your nervous system no longer depends entirely on external confirmation for emotional survival. Now pause for a moment and imagine something. Imagine pursuing your goals without tying your entire identity to outcomes. Imagine creating from inspiration instead of insecurity, leading from purpose instead of ego, building from alignment instead of comparison. How differently would life feel? How much lighter would ambition become? Because ambition rooted in insecurity creates pressure. But ambition rooted in alignment creates expansion. One drains the soul, the other expresses it. And this is where the sacred balance becomes so important. The goal is not to eliminate ambition. The goal is to remove emotional dependency from ambition, to pursue greatness without worshiping validation, to build success without losing inner peace, to become powerful without becoming emotionally imprisoned by external approval. That is mastery. Now here is another truth most people discover eventually. The more connected a person becomes to themselves internally, the less interested they become in performing superiority externally. Why? Because wholeness does not need exaggeration. A fulfilled person rarely needs constant attention. A grounded person rarely needs constant comparison. A peaceful person rarely needs to dominate every interaction. And this creates a different kind of presence. A calm presence. A stable presence. A rooted presence. The kind of energy people trust instinctively. Because true confidence feels safe. Not loud. Not desperate. Not forceful. Safe. Now this does not mean confident people never experience insecurity. They do. But insecurity no longer controls identity entirely. That is the difference. They can experience doubt without collapsing, criticism without self-destruction, failure without losing worth. Because worth is no longer attached entirely to performance. And that realization changes everything. Because now success becomes expression instead of emotional survival. The person no longer needs to achieve constantly just to feel enough. They can create from fullness instead of emptiness. And paradoxically, this often creates healthier success, sustainable success, peaceful success, aligned success. Now think carefully about this final question. What happens when your worth no longer depends on outcomes? What happens when you no longer need constant proof to feel valuable? How differently would you move through life? How differently would you speak, create love, lead rest? Because when identity becomes internally stable, another transformation naturally begins. The frantic chase weakens, the emotional pressure softens, and life begins moving from force into alignment. Which brings us to the next realization. Because many people spend their lives chasing what they desire, without realizing their chasing may actually be pushing it farther away. Chapter 6. Stop chasing and start aligning. There is a strange pattern that appears again and again in human life. The harder people chase certain things, the farther those things often seem to move away. Think about that carefully. People chase love desperately, and relationships become emotionally unstable. They chase money obsessively and feel permanently stressed. They chase success endlessly and lose their peace. They chase validation constantly and still feel unseen internally. Why do the things people chase hardest often move farther away? Pause for a moment and truly sit with that question, because the answer reveals something profound about human energy, manifestation, and emotional alignment. Most people are not only chasing desires, they are chasing relief from emotional lack. That distinction changes everything. A person says they want abundance, but beneath the surface, they may actually be trying to escape feelings of insecurity. A person says they want love, but internally they may be trying to escape loneliness or unworthiness. A person says they want success, but emotionally they may be trying to outrun inadequacy. And when desire becomes emotionally fused with emptiness, pressure forms. Now, pressure may produce temporary motivation, but sustained pressure eventually exhausts the nervous system, because the body cannot remain in emotional survival mode forever without consequences. This is why so many people feel burned out, even while pursuing things they supposedly want. The soul knows the difference between aligned creation and emotional compensation. One expands energy, the other drains it. And this is where manifestation becomes misunderstood again. Many people think obsession equals commitment, but obsession often signals fear. Fear of not receiving, fear of missing out, fear of failure, fear that without constant control, everything will disappear. And here is the psychological plot twist most people never notice. Obsession signals mistrust in life, not faith in possibility. Think about how powerful that realization actually is. A person constantly forcing outcomes is often unconsciously communicating, "I do not believe things will unfold unless I control every moment." That emotional state matters deeply, because energy built on fear creates tension, and tension distorts clarity. This is why emotionally attached people often overthink themselves into exhaustion. They monitor every sign, analyze every response, question every delay, fear every uncertainty, and eventually, peace disappears completely. Now, this does not mean goals are wrong. It does not mean ambition is wrong. The issue is not desire. The issue is emotional dependence on outcomes, because dependence creates desperation, and desperation creates resistance. Now pause for a moment and reflect honestly. How often have you linked your emotional peace to achieving something externally? I will finally relax when. I will finally feel worthy when. I will finally feel secure when. Think about how much pressure that places on the future. And think about how exhausting it becomes for the nervous system to live in constant emotional postponement. This is why aligned people move differently. Aligned people still pursue goals, still create, still build, still dream boldly, but they move with intention, not desperation. That distinction changes the entire energetic experience of life. An aligned person works steadily without emotionally collapsing every time uncertainty appears. They remain connected to peace while pursuing growth. And paradoxically, this often creates greater momentum, because emotional resistance decreases, fear decreases, internal conflict decreases. Peace attracts more than pressure. Repeat that slowly. Peace attracts more than pressure. Most people underestimate the power of emotional calmness. A peaceful mind sees clearly. A peaceful nervous system responds wisely. A peaceful person notices opportunities fear would overlook. But pressure narrows perception. Pressure creates tunnel vision, emotional reactivity, impulsive decisions, energetic exhaustion. And eventually the person begins forcing life instead of flowing with it consciously. Now here is something important to understand. Alignment does not mean passivity. Alignment is not laziness disguised as spirituality. Aligned people still take action, but their actions come from grounded intention instead of emotional panic. There is a major difference between inspired movement and frantic chasing. One creates expansion. The other creates depletion. Now let us go deeper. Why do people become emotionally attached so easily? Because many people were conditioned to believe external outcomes determine internal worth. So naturally, the mind becomes emotionally dependent on results. If this relationship works, then I matter. If I achieve this goal, then I am successful. If people recognize me, then I am valuable. But this creates emotional instability because peace becomes conditional, and conditional peace is fragile. True peace cannot depend entirely on external circumstances. Otherwise, life controls identity constantly. The sacred balance teaches something different. It teaches that inner stability must exist alongside ambition, not after it, alongside it. This is why emotionally aligned people can pursue massive goals without destroying themselves internally. Their nervous system is not treating every outcome like a survival threat. Now here is a powerful realization. Many people chase things because they subconsciously believe they are separate from them already. Separate from abundance. Separate from love. Separate from peace. Separate from worthiness. And that emotional separation creates tension, because the mind constantly focuses on absence. But manifestation changes when emotional identity changes. The person no longer says, "I must force life to complete me." Instead, they begin saying, "I am becoming internally aligned with the life I desire." That shift changes the energy underneath everything. Now let us explore this practically. Imagine two people pursuing the same goal. The first person operates from desperation. Every obstacle creates panic. Every delay creates self-doubt. Every uncertainty feels threatening. Their nervous system remains tense constantly. Now imagine the second person. They are intentional, committed, focused, but internally grounded. They trust themselves. Remain emotionally stable during uncertainty. Continue taking aligned action without collapsing into fear. Which person do you think sustains momentum longer? Which person thinks more clearly? Which person radiates more confidence? This is why alignment matters more than force. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, what are you currently chasing from emotional lack? Really think about that. Where are you seeking external outcomes to solve internal disconnection? Awareness matters because unconscious desperation silently shapes behavior. It shapes relationships, career decisions, financial patterns, manifestation itself. Now here is another important realization. The nervous system cannot distinguish clearly between inspired pursuit and emotional survival when stress becomes chronic. So many people unknowingly turn goals into emotional emergencies. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels high pressure. Everything feels tied to identity. And eventually burnout appears. Not because ambition is wrong, but because emotional attachment overloaded the nervous system. This is why emotional detachment is misunderstood. Detachment does not mean apathy. It means your peace is no longer enslaved to outcomes. You still care. You still create. You still pursue vision powerfully. But internally, you remain rooted. That is balance. Now let us move into a coaching moment together. Close your eyes for a moment mentally and imagine the version of yourself who already feels internally whole. Not perfect, whole. How do they move through life? How do they speak? How do they make decisions? How do they approach uncertainty? How do they pursue goals? Notice something important. That version of you is likely calmer, more grounded, less reactive, less desperate for validation, more emotionally stable. This is the shift manifestation requires. Not fantasy obsession, identity embodiment. Because fantasy without embodiment creates emotional separation. But embodiment changes energy immediately. Now instead of visualizing only external rewards, visualize internal alignment. Visualize emotional stability, self-trust, peace, grounded confidence, wholeness, because external manifestations become far easier to sustain when internal identity stabilizes first. And this is where many people finally experience relief. The exhausting chase weakens. The emotional pressure softens. The constant fear of not having begins dissolving. And suddenly, life feels lighter. Not because goals disappeared, but because identity stopped depending entirely on outcomes. Peace attracts more than pressure. That phrase becomes deeply important here, because peaceful energy does not force constantly. It allows space for intuition, clarity, timing, discernment, and this often creates more aligned opportunities naturally. Now here is another paradox. People often receive what they desire more easily once emotional desperation fades, not because they stopped caring, but because resistance decreased, fear decreased, internal conflict decreased, and the nervous system finally relaxed enough to receive instead of grasp constantly. Think about how many beautiful things in life emerge naturally when force disappears. Connection, creativity, insight, presence, love. Life flows differently when fear stops interrupting every moment. And this realization changes ambition completely. Now goals become expressions of alignment, instead of attempts to escape inadequacy. Now creation becomes joyful instead of emotionally exhausting. Now manifestation becomes less about controlling reality and more about becoming internally coherent enough to move with life consciously. And that is where true power begins. Not in force, not in obsession, but in rooted alignment. Now think carefully about this final question. What if your constant striving has been interrupting the very thing you want? What if your fear of not receiving has been creating resistance? What if your emotional pressure has been clouding your clarity? What if peace itself is part of the manifestation process? Because once a person stops chasing from emptiness, another transformation becomes possible. They stop relating to people from emotional dependency too. And that changes relationships entirely. Because connection becomes healthier when two grounded people meet, instead of two wounded survival systems trying to complete each other. Chapter 7. The Power of Rooted Relationships. Human beings are deeply relational. No matter how independent people become, no matter how successful, how disciplined, how guarded, the soul still longs for connection, to be understood, seen, felt, known. And yet, relationships are also where many people lose themselves most easily. This is why relationships become one of the greatest mirrors of inner alignment. Because connection does not only reveal love, it reveals wounds, fears, attachment patterns, emotional conditioning, identity instability, and many people mistake emotional intensity for genuine connection. Pause for a moment and think honestly about that. Have you ever confused emotional intensity with genuine connection? Many people have. They confuse obsession with love, chaos with passion, emotional unpredictability with chemistry, rescuing with caring, attachment with intimacy. And because these patterns often feel emotionally powerful, people assume they must be meaningful. But intensity and alignment are not the same thing. A relationship can feel emotionally consuming while still being deeply unhealthy. Now, this chapter is not about becoming emotionally detached. It is about understanding the difference between dependency, avoidance, and rooted connection. Because all three create very different relationship experiences. Dependency says, I need you to complete me. Avoidance says, I do not need anyone. But rooted connection says, I choose connection without abandoning myself. That is balance. And balance changes everything. Now let us look deeper at dependency first. Dependent relationships are often built on emotional survival instead of emotional wholeness. One person seeks validation constantly. Another seeks control constantly. One fears abandonment. Another fears vulnerability. And together, they unconsciously create emotional instability. Not because they are bad people, but because unresolved wounds are interacting with each other continuously. Think about how many relationships are actually negotiations between unhealed fears. Fear of being alone, fear of rejection, fear of inadequacy, fear of not being chosen. And when fear becomes the foundation, people begin relating from emotional scarcity. They cling, control, over-sacrifice, overanalyze, lose boundaries, lose identity. Eventually, exhaustion appears, because no relationship can permanently stabilize an identity that is disconnected from itself internally. Now let us look at the opposite extreme. Avoidance. Avoidant people often convince themselves they are protecting peace, but many are actually protecting unresolved pain. They fear dependence, fear vulnerability, fear emotional exposure, so they maintain emotional distance, sometimes subtly, sometimes completely. And while this creates temporary emotional control, it also limits genuine intimacy, because intimacy requires openness, not recklessness, openness. Now here is the important realization. Dependency loses self inside connection. Avoidance avoids connection to protect self. But rooted connection maintains self while experiencing connection. That distinction changes relationships completely. Rooted people do not disappear emotionally inside relationships. They remain connected to themselves, their values, boundaries, identity, peace. And because of this, love becomes healthier. Not perfect, healthier. Now pause for a moment and reflect honestly. Who are you when nobody needs anything from you? Think deeply about that question, because many people build identity around being needed. The helper, the provider, the rescuer, the caretaker. And while caring for others is beautiful, there is danger in building worth entirely around usefulness. Because eventually the person forgets how to exist outside emotional service. This creates hidden imbalance in relationships. The person gives excessively hoping to feel valuable, overextends themselves emotionally, ignores boundaries repeatedly, and slowly, resentment begins forming underneath the surface. Not because love is wrong, but because self-abandonment creates emotional depletion eventually. Now here is another truth many people overlook. Healthy relationships should expand identity, not consume it. Think about that carefully. A healthy relationship should not require shrinking your spirit, suppressing your truth, abandoning your dreams, disconnecting from your intuition. True connection creates expansion. You become more yourself, not less. This is one of the clearest signs of rooted love. You feel emotionally safe enough to remain authentic. Now let us go deeper into how unresolved wounds shape relationships. Because wounds silently influence attraction patterns constantly. A person who feels unworthy may chase emotionally unavailable people because inconsistency feels familiar. A person afraid of abandonment may overgive constantly to avoid rejection. A person who fears vulnerability may sabotage healthy intimacy unconsciously. And unless these patterns become conscious, people repeat emotional cycles endlessly. Different faces, different situations, same emotional dynamics. This is why self-awareness matters so deeply. Without awareness, wounds choose relationships unconsciously, and wounded attraction often feels powerful emotionally, not because it is aligned, but because it activates familiar emotional patterns. This is why emotionally healthy connection can initially feel unfamiliar to some people. Peaceful love may feel boring to a nervous system conditioned to chaos. Consistency may feel suspicious. Stability may feel emotionally unfamiliar. And this is important to understand because healing changes attraction itself. Wholeness connects differently than emptiness. Repeat that slowly. Wholeness connects differently than emptiness. A whole person seeks connection from overflow, not emotional starvation. That changes relationships entirely. Now, instead of asking, "Who can complete me?" the person begins asking, "Who aligns with the life and energy I am consciously building?" That shift creates healthier dynamics immediately, because rooted people stop seeking emotional rescue. And this leads to another profound realization. Many people are not actually seeking love. They are seeking relief. Relief from loneliness. Relief from insecurity. Relief from emotional emptiness. But when relationships become emotional medicine, pressure increases. The other person becomes responsible for stabilizing identity, and eventually imbalance forms. No human being can permanently carry another person's entire emotional foundation. That is too heavy. This is why self-connection matters so deeply before connection with others. A rooted person can love deeply without collapsing emotionally every time uncertainty appears, can communicate honestly without losing themselves in fear, can remain open without becoming emotionally consumed. And this creates calmer relationships, more conscious relationships, relationships built on truth instead of emotional survival. Now, here is something many people discover later in life. The quality of your relationships often reflects the quality of your relationship with yourself. Think about that carefully. A person disconnected from themselves often tolerates misalignment longer. A person lacking boundaries often attracts dynamics requiring over-sacrifice. A person emotionally starving for validation may ignore red flags repeatedly. But grounded people notice misalignment faster, because internal clarity changes discernment. Now let us expand this beyond romantic relationships. These patterns affect friendships too, business partnerships, leadership dynamics, collaboration, community. Some people dominate because they fear irrelevance. Some avoid leadership because they fear visibility. Some struggle to collaborate because hyper-independence became identity. Again, wounds shape interaction constantly until awareness interrupts the cycle. And this is why rooted relationships matter not only emotionally, but spiritually. Relationships either reinforce wholeness or reinforce fragmentation. Healthy relationships encourage truth, growth, peace, expansion, authenticity. Unhealthy relationships often reinforce fear, performance, emotional instability, or self-abandonment. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, which relationships in your life help you feel more connected to yourself? And which ones require you to disconnect from yourself repeatedly? That awareness matters deeply, because energy shifts around alignment. Now here is another powerful realization. Relationships thrive when two grounded people meet instead of two emotional survival systems. Think about how profound that really is. When two grounded people connect, communication improves, boundaries become healthier, conflict becomes more conscious, love becomes less possessive, connection becomes more peaceful. Not because challenges disappear, but because identity is no longer collapsing under emotional pressure constantly. And this changes manifestation too, because emotionally grounded relationships create energetic stability instead of chronic chaos. The nervous system relaxes, peace increases, creativity increases, expansion becomes possible. This is why the sacred balance teaches both self-rooting and connection simultaneously. Isolation is not the answer. Dependency is not the answer. Conscious connection is. Now let us go even deeper. Many people secretly fear grounded love because grounded love removes emotional drama. And without drama, unresolved wounds become visible. No more chasing. No more emotional games. No more instability creating artificial intensity. Just truth, presence, consistency, honesty. And to wounded nervous systems, that level of calmness can initially feel unfamiliar. But eventually, the soul recognizes it as peace. real peace, not emotional addiction mistaken for love. And once a person experiences rooted connection, they stop romanticizing emotional chaos, because they realize healthy love does not constantly destroy peace. Healthy love protects peace. Now think carefully about this final realization. What if love becomes healthier the moment you stop needing it to save you? What if connection becomes deeper once fear weakens? What if relationships become lighter once identity stabilizes internally? What if wholeness itself transforms the way you love? Because once relationships stop becoming emotional survival mechanisms, another transformation becomes possible. The mind itself becomes easier to observe clearly. And that changes everything. Because the next battle is not only external, it is internal. The thoughts you believe, the fears you repeat, the identities you unconsciously reinforce every day. And until a person learns how to observe the mind consciously, old patterns continue recreating old realities. Chapter 8. Become the observer of your mind. There is one place where every human battle eventually begins. The mind. Not circumstances first. Not relationships first. Not money first. The mind. Because before a person speaks, they think. Before they act, they interpret. Before they create patterns externally, those patterns are rehearsed internally. And yet most people spend their entire lives reacting to the mind, without ever truly observing it consciously. Think about how strange that really is. People observe other people carefully. Observe social media. Observe problems. Observe external events. But rarely stop long enough to observe the internal voice shaping their entire emotional reality. And because of this, unconscious patterns quietly become identity. This is one of the deepest truths about human suffering. Most suffering is unconscious repetition mistaken for personality. Pause for a moment and let that settle fully. Many people think, this is just who I am. But often, they are simply repeating emotional patterns long enough that the patterns began feeling familiar. An anxious person may think, I am naturally anxious. A fearful person may think, I am just cautious. A hyper-independent person may think, I simply do not need people. But many identities are not the soul. They are adaptations. Protective emotional loops repeated so consistently they became normalized. And this is why self-awareness changes everything. Because awareness interrupts unconscious repetition. You cannot change patterns you refuse to observe. Repeat that slowly. You cannot change patterns you refuse to observe. That phrase matters deeply. Because the moment a person begins observing themselves consciously, transformation begins immediately. Not because life changes instantly externally, but because unconscious behavior loses some of its control once it becomes visible. Now let us go deeper. The mind is constantly interpreting reality, constantly assigning meaning, creating predictions, projecting fears, reinforcing identities. And most people believe these mental narratives automatically, without questioning them, without observing them, without asking, is this actually true? This is why the mind becomes so powerful. Unquestioned thoughts become emotional realities. Now here is a wake-up moment that may change the way you see yourself forever. Notice how often your mind predicts problems before life creates them. Really think about that. How often does the mind rehearse rejection before conversations happen? Failure before opportunities begin? Loss before anything has been lost? The mind constantly projects possibilities. And when fearful projections repeat long enough, the nervous system starts responding as though the imagined threat is already real. This is why overthinking becomes exhausting. The body experiences emotional stress from imagined scenarios repeatedly, and eventually, fear becomes habitual. Now here is the important realization. The mind is not only describing reality, it is influencing emotional energy continuously. Thoughts shape emotional states. Emotional states reinforce identity. Identity influences decisions, perception, and manifestation. Everything is connected. This is why fearful thinking patterns eventually shape life experiences indirectly. Not because every thought magically manifests instantly, but because repeated thought patterns influence behavior, confidence, emotional regulation, perception, and energetic presence constantly. A fearful mind hesitates differently, speaks differently, chooses differently, interprets differently, and over time, life begins reflecting those internal patterns outwardly. Now, this does not mean people should become afraid of every negative thought. That misunderstanding creates even more anxiety. The deeper goal is awareness, not perfection, because thoughts themselves are not the enemy. Unconscious identification is. There is a major difference between having a fearful thought and becoming emotionally consumed by it. And this is where observation becomes powerful. The observer notices thoughts without immediately becoming them. That distinction changes everything. Now here comes one of the biggest psychological plot twists in this entire audiobook. Not every thought belongs to your authentic self. Pause for a moment and really absorb that. Some thoughts come from fear conditioning, some from childhood experiences, some from past pain, some from social programming, some from unresolved emotional wounds. But many people treat every thought as truth automatically, and that creates suffering. Imagine believing every fearful thought without question. I am not good enough. People always leave. Nothing ever works out. I will fail. I cannot trust anyone. If these thoughts repeat long enough, identity starts organizing around them. And once identity forms, behavior follows naturally. This is why observation matters so deeply. Because observation creates separation between awareness and conditioning. The observer can say, "This is a fear response, not necessarily truth. This is an old emotional pattern resurfacing. This thought does not define who I am." And that space changes everything. Now let us explore reactive identity loops. Most people unconsciously live inside repeating emotional cycles. A trigger appears. The mind reacts automatically. Emotion intensifies. Behavior follows. The pattern repeats, again and again, without awareness. This is why some people keep recreating similar relationship dynamics, similar fears, similar emotional experiences, not because life is punishing them, but because unconscious identity loops keep repeating familiar patterns. And the mind loves familiarity, even painful familiarity. Now here is a powerful coaching moment. The next time a strong emotional reaction appears, pause before identifying with it completely. Observe it. Notice the thought. Notice the emotional sensation. Notice the pattern. Ask yourself, is this reaction aligned with my present reality or an old emotional program resurfacing? That single pause can interrupt years of unconscious conditioning, because awareness weakens automatic reactivity. Now, this does not mean suppressing emotions. That is another misunderstanding. Observation is not emotional avoidance. Observation means remaining conscious while emotions move through you, without immediately becoming consumed by them. Think about the ocean for a moment. Waves move constantly across the surface, but the deeper parts of the ocean remain still. Most people live entirely on the emotional surface of the mind. Every thought becomes identity. Every fear becomes reality. Every emotion becomes permanent truth. But grounded awareness exists deeper. The observer notices movement without losing center, and this creates emotional stability. Now here is another profound realization. The quality of your inner dialogue shapes the quality of your emotional life. Think about how often people speak to themselves internally with harshness, constant criticism, self-doubt, fear, shame, comparison, and then they wonder why peace feels distant. The mind becomes the emotional environment the nervous system lives inside every day. This is why conscious awareness matters so deeply, because eventually you begin noticing which thoughts strengthen alignment and which thoughts reinforce fear. You begin recognizing patterns instead of blindly obeying them. Now pause for a moment and reflect honestly. What thoughts have you repeated so often that they began feeling like identity? Really think about that. What stories have shaped your life quietly? I must struggle to succeed. I cannot trust people. I always get abandoned. I need external validation to matter. Awareness of these narratives is transformational, because once a story becomes visible, it can finally be questioned. And this is where true freedom begins. Not through controlling every thought perfectly, but through no longer being unconsciously controlled by them. Now let us go deeper into manifestation again. Manifestation is heavily influenced by identity, and identity is reinforced through repeated thought-emotion cycles. So if the mind constantly rehearses fear, inadequacy, limitation, or scarcity, the nervous system begins normalizing those states emotionally. But observation interrupts normalization. The observer notices. This fear is repeating. This pattern is familiar. This belief may not actually be truth. And once awareness enters the pattern, choice becomes possible. That is the beginning of transformation. Because unconscious repetition loses power once conscious awareness arrives. You cannot change patterns you refuse to observe. That phrase becomes more important the deeper you understand yourself. Now here is another subtle truth. A peaceful mind is not a mind with zero thoughts. It is a mind no longer enslaved by every thought. There is a massive difference. The goal is not mental perfection. The goal is conscious relationship with the mind, to observe without drowning, to feel without collapsing, to think without becoming trapped in endless reactivity. And once this awareness strengthens, life begins feeling different, slower internally, clearer, less chaotic, because now the mind is no longer running unconsciously without interruption. Now awareness is present, and awareness changes behavior naturally. The person begins responding consciously instead of reacting habitually. That changes relationships, manifestation, peace, identity, everything. Now think carefully about this final question. If you stopped believing every fearful thought tomorrow, who would you become? How differently would you move through life? How differently would you love, create, speak, lead? Because once a person learns how to observe the mind consciously, another transformation becomes possible. They begin designing a life that actually supports peace instead of constantly disrupting it. And that changes not only the inner world, but the external environment too. Chapter 9. Build a life that protects your peace. There comes a moment in every person's journey when insight alone is no longer enough. The mind understands the concepts. The heart recognizes the truth. The soul feels ready for change. But the environment remains the same. The habits remain the same. The routines remain the same. The relationships remain the same. The emotional patterns remain the same. And eventually the person realizes something important. Transformation is not sustained through inspiration alone. It is sustained through construction. A peaceful life is not accidental. It is constructed. Pause for a moment and truly absorb that. Because many people secretly hope peace will appear automatically someday. After success, after healing, after money, after relationships improve, after life becomes less stressful. But peace does not usually appear by accident. It is built intentionally, one decision at a time, one boundary at a time, one habit at a time, one aligned choice at a time. And this is where philosophy becomes reality, because inner alignment must eventually shape external life. Otherwise, the environment keeps retraining the nervous system back into survival patterns. Your environment trains your identity daily. Repeat that slowly. Your environment trains your identity daily. That phrase matters deeply because people underestimate how much their surroundings influence their emotional state. The conversations they tolerate, the media they consume, the chaos they normalize, the schedules they maintain, the environments they remain inside. Everything affects the nervous system. Everything. Now think about how differently you feel in certain environments. Some spaces create calmness immediately. Others create tension immediately. Some people energize your spirit. Others drain it completely. Some routines reconnect you to yourself. Others disconnect you from yourself entirely. And yet many people continue living inside environments that constantly disrupt inner peace. Not because they are weak, but because dysfunction slowly became familiar. This is why conscious life design matters. Because if the environment repeatedly reinforces stress, emotional chaos, distraction, and misalignment, the nervous system struggles to stabilize. Now here is an important realization. Burnout is often caused less by effort and more by misalignment. Think about that carefully. People can work very hard without burning out when the work feels meaningful, aligned, and emotionally sustainable. But even small amounts of effort become exhausting when the soul feels disconnected constantly. This is why some people feel drained after interactions that appear normal externally. The nervous system recognizes misalignment even when the conscious mind tries to ignore it, and eventually exhaustion appears. Now pause for a moment and reflect honestly. What in your current life constantly disconnects you from yourself? Really think about that. Which habits weaken your clarity? Which relationships drain your energy? Which routines create emotional heaviness? Which environments increase anxiety instead of peace? Awareness matters because many people keep expecting internal peace while remaining committed to external chaos. And those two realities cannot coexist forever. The sacred balance requires intentional alignment, not perfection. Alignment. Now, this does not mean eliminating every challenge from life. That is impossible. Life will always contain uncertainty, growth, responsibility, and difficulty sometimes. But there is a massive difference between meaningful challenge and chronic self-disconnection. One expands the soul, the other depletes it. Now let us move into practical transformation. Because peace is not only emotional, it is structural. Peace exists in routines, schedules, boundaries, sleep, nutrition, conversations, environment, attention. A person cannot constantly overstimulate the nervous system and still expect deep inner calmness. The body keeps score of lifestyle patterns, and many people unknowingly train themselves into emotional instability daily. Constant noise, constant scrolling, constant urgency, constant comparison, constant emotional input. The nervous system rarely gets space to breathe, and eventually, people forget what inner stillness even feels like. Now here is something powerful to realize. Protecting peace is not selfish. It is necessary, because a disconnected person cannot create sustainably from wholeness. They may produce temporarily, but eventually exhaustion appears. This is why grounded people become increasingly intentional about what they allow into their lives. Not from arrogance, from awareness. They understand energy is valuable. Attention is valuable. Peace is valuable. Emotional clarity is valuable. And once that realization deepens, life decisions begin changing naturally. Now let us talk about habits. Because habits quietly shape identity over time. Every repeated behavior teaches the subconscious something. Every day, if a person repeatedly ignores their needs, the subconscious learns self-neglect. If a person repeatedly chooses distraction over reflection, awareness weakens. If a person repeatedly tolerates draining environments, exhaustion becomes normalized. Again, your environment trains your identity daily. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine waking up intentionally, protecting quiet time, moving your body consciously, speaking to yourself differently, choosing relationships that support growth, reducing unnecessary chaos. How differently would the nervous system begin responding over time? This is how peaceful lives are built, not through one dramatic moment, but through repeated aligned decisions. Now here is another important realization. Many people say they want peace, but their lifestyle is addicted to stimulation. The mind constantly seeks distraction, noise, urgency, drama, emotional intensity, and without awareness, overstimulation becomes identity. This is why silence can initially feel uncomfortable for some people. Stillness reveals what distraction was hiding, but eventually stillness becomes healing, because clarity returns in quiet environments. Now pause for a moment and think honestly. When was the last time you truly felt internally calm? Not distracted, not temporarily entertained. Calm. That question reveals a lot, because many people are surviving stimulation, not experiencing peace. Now here is another truth many people need to hear. Boundaries are life architecture. Every boundary shapes emotional experience. What you tolerate shapes your nervous system. What you repeatedly allow shapes your identity. What you continue participating in shapes your future. And this is why conscious boundaries become acts of self-respect. Not punishment. Protection. Protection of clarity. Protection of emotional stability. Protection of peace. Now let us go deeper into relationships again. Some relationships nourish the nervous system. Others exhaust it. And many people stay connected to draining dynamics because they fear disappointing others. But constantly abandoning yourself to maintain external harmony creates internal conflict. Eventually the body feels it. Fatigue, anxiety, emotional heaviness, loss of motivation. The soul recognizes misalignment long before the mind fully accepts it. Now here is your coaching challenge for this chapter. Remove one draining pattern immediately. Just one. Not someday. Now. Maybe it is a habit, a relationship dynamic, a toxic routine, an unhealthy emotional attachment, a constant source of overstimulation. Remove one thing that repeatedly disconnects you from yourself. Because transformation accelerates when misalignment stops consuming energy constantly. Now let us move into future vision. Imagine building a life intentionally around peace instead of pressure. Imagine designing routines that support your nervous system instead of overwhelming it. Imagine relationships rooted in honesty instead of emotional survival. Imagine goals pursued from inspiration instead of desperation. How different would life feel? Because many people unknowingly build lifestyles that require them to remain emotionally dysregulated just to maintain them. Constant urgency becomes normalized. But urgency is not the same as purpose, and exhaustion is not proof of worthiness. That realization changes everything. Now here is another profound truth. A peaceful life often looks simpler externally than people expect. Not smaller, simpler. Clear priorities, intentional relationships, grounded routines, aligned environments, meaningful work. The nervous system thrives in clarity. And clarity creates energy. Now this does not mean life becomes perfect. There will still be challenges, growth seasons, unexpected change, but internally stability strengthens. And stable people recover faster emotionally, because their lifestyle supports healing instead of constantly interrupting it. Now think carefully about this. What kind of person are you becoming through your daily environment? Not your future goals. Your present environment, because identity is practiced daily. Every conversation reinforces something. Every routine reinforces something. Every emotional pattern reinforces something. And slowly a life compounds. This is why intentional living matters so deeply. Not because perfection is required, but because repeated alignment changes the nervous system over time. Peace becomes more natural. Clarity becomes more natural. Self-trust becomes more natural. And eventually, life stops feeling like constant emotional survival. Now here is the expansion statement this entire chapter points toward. A peaceful life is not accidental. It is constructed, built carefully, protected consciously, aligned intentionally. And once a person truly understands this, they stop waiting for peace to arrive externally. They begin creating conditions that allow peace to grow internally every single day. Now think carefully about this final question. What kind of future becomes possible when your nervous system finally feels safe? What becomes possible when fear no longer controls every decision? When exhaustion no longer defines ambition? When peace becomes your foundation instead of your reward? Because once inner stability strengthens, another transformation becomes possible. A person no longer lives reactively. They begin living intentionally, not merely surviving life, but consciously designing it. And that realization opens the final expansion of this journey. Because the ultimate purpose of balance is not only personal peace. It is becoming the kind of human being capable of building a meaningful life without losing your soul in the process. Chapter 10. Master the Sacred Balance. There comes a moment in every transformation journey when a person realizes something unexpected. Healing was never about becoming someone completely different. It was about returning to alignment, returning to truth, returning to clarity, returning to wholeness. And perhaps this is the deepest misunderstanding modern life has created. People believe fulfillment exists somewhere outside themselves, in more achievement, more validation, more control, more perfection, more proving. But the deeper journey has never truly been about becoming more. It has always been about becoming aligned. Pause for a moment and really let that settle into your mind. The life you desire may not require becoming more, only becoming aligned. That realization changes everything. Because once a person understands this deeply, the frantic chase begins softening. The pressure weakens. The performance weakens. The emotional exhaustion weakens. And slowly life becomes less about force and more about conscious balance. This is the sacred balance. Not isolation. Not dependency, not ego, not self-erasure. Balance, the ability to remain rooted within while expanding outward. Repeat that slowly. Remain rooted within while expanding outward. That phrase is the heartbeat of this entire journey. Because many people lose themselves while trying to build a life. Some sacrifice peace for ambition. Others sacrifice growth for safety. Some lose identity inside relationships. Others isolate themselves to avoid pain. But extremes always create imbalance eventually. And imbalance always pulls the soul away from itself. Now think about everything explored throughout this audiobook. You learned how self-abandonment weakens manifestation. How emotional walls are not true protection. How identity shapes reality. How confidence differs from ego. How chasing creates resistance. How grounded relationships create expansion. How observing the mind changes patterns. How intentional environments protect peace. All of these teachings point toward one central truth. Wholeness changes everything. A whole person loves differently, builds differently, leads differently, creates differently, manifests differently. Because wholeness removes internal war. And internal peace creates external clarity. Now, this does not mean life suddenly becomes perfect. That misunderstanding causes many people to become discouraged. Mastery is not perfection. Mastery is conscious recalibration. Think about how important that realization is. Many people approach growth with perfectionistic thinking. They believe, if I still feel fear sometimes, I failed. If I still struggle emotionally, I failed. If life becomes difficult again, I failed. But balance is not something achieved once permanently. Balance is maintained through awareness, not control. Life moves in seasons. Energy shifts. Challenges appear. Emotions rise and fall. The goal is not becoming emotionally robotic. The goal is remaining conscious enough to return to alignment repeatedly. That is mastery. A grounded person notices when they are drifting away from themselves and recalibrates. They reconnect to peace, reconnect to truth, reconnect to awareness, without shame, without self-destruction. This creates emotional resilience. Now pause for a moment and reflect deeply. How much of your suffering came from trying to force yourself into extremes, trying to be endlessly productive, endlessly selfless, endlessly strong, endlessly independent, endlessly perfect? Human beings were never designed to live in permanent extremes. The nervous system eventually collapses under imbalance. And perhaps this is why so many people feel exhausted internally. They are fighting themselves constantly. One part chasing success, another craving rest. One part seeking love, another fearing vulnerability. One part wanting expansion, another clinging to safety. Internal contradiction drains life force, but conscious alignment restores it. Now here is a profound realization. The sacred balance is not passive. It is deeply intentional, because remaining rooted within requires awareness daily. It requires noticing when fear begins leading again, when validation becomes addictive again, when self-abandonment begins quietly returning, when the mind starts creating old emotional stories again. And instead of unconsciously collapsing into those patterns, you observe them. You recalibrate. Again and again. That is growth, not perfection. Awareness. Now let us move into a deeper reflection together. Imagine waking up each morning no longer trying to become worthy, but remembering that your worth was never truly missing. How differently would you move through life? How differently would you speak? Choose. Love. Lead. Because many people spend their entire lives trying to earn permission to feel enough. But wholeness changes that relationship completely. Now creation comes from expression instead of emotional desperation. Now relationships become connection instead of emotional rescue. Now success becomes expansion instead of compensation. That shift changes everything. Now here is another important truth. The external life people build eventually reflects their internal relationship with themselves. A disconnected person often builds disconnected environments, chaotic schedules, chaotic relationships, chaotic emotional patterns. But rooted people begin creating rooted lives, not because they control everything perfectly, but because inner clarity changes external decisions naturally. This is why peace is so powerful. Peace sharpens discernment. You notice misalignment faster. Notice draining environments faster. Notice emotional manipulation faster. Notice when your soul is moving away from itself. And awareness allows correction before destruction. Now let us expand even further philosophically. Human beings often search endlessly for meaning externally. But perhaps meaning is not found only in achievement. Perhaps meaning is found in coherence. Living in a way where your inner truth and outer life no longer contradict each other constantly. Think about how rare that really is. So many people wear emotional masks daily, perform identities daily, suppress intuition daily, and eventually the soul becomes exhausted from fragmentation. But aligned people feel different internally, not because their lives are challenge-free, but because they are no longer divided against themselves. A divided mind cannot create a unified reality. That phrase from earlier now reveals itself at an even deeper level, because unity within creates power. Now here is another realization. The world often teaches people to either harden themselves completely or lose themselves completely. But wisdom lives in the middle path, strong enough to maintain boundaries, soft enough to remain open, grounded enough to remain peaceful. ambitious enough to keep expanding. That is balance. Now pause for a moment and reflect honestly. Who are you becoming beneath all the noise? Not the performance, not the image, not the expectations. You, the real you beneath fear, conditioning, comparison, and survival patterns. Because that is the self this journey has always been guiding you back toward. Not a fake spiritual identity, not a perfected image, your authentic center. And once a person reconnects to that center, life begins changing naturally, not through force, through alignment. Now let us move into identity reinforcement. You are no longer becoming someone else. You are becoming whole. Repeat that within yourself slowly. You are no longer becoming someone else. You are becoming whole. That realization removes so much unnecessary pressure. Because now growth becomes integration, not performance. The fragmented parts begin reconnecting. The fearful parts begin healing. The exhausted parts begin resting. The disconnected parts begin remembering themselves again. And slowly, the soul feels lighter. Now here is another profound truth. Wholeness does not make life smaller. It makes life more intentional. You stop wasting energy proving yourself constantly. Stop chasing empty validation. Stop abandoning peace for external approval. And that reclaimed energy becomes available for creation, for purpose, for meaningful relationships, for vision, for presence. This is why rooted people often create the most sustainable impact, because they are no longer operating entirely from emotional survival. Now think carefully about this final reflection. If you truly remained rooted within while expanding outward, what kind of life could you build? What kind of relationships could you sustain? What kind of peace could you experience? What kind of future could emerge? Because the sacred balance was never about choosing between self and others. It was about learning how to honor both consciously, to protect your soul without closing your heart, to pursue vision without abandoning peace, to love deeply without losing identity, to grow externally while remaining internally grounded. That is mastery, not perfection, alignment. And once a person understands that deeply, life itself begins feeling different, less like survival, more like conscious creation. Now the journey closes with one final realization. You do not need to become someone completely different to experience the life you desire. You simply need to stop abandoning the deepest truth already waiting within you. Remain rooted within while expanding outward, and everything begins changing from there. In closing, and now you understand something most people spend their entire lives searching for. Peace and ambition were never enemies. Love and boundaries were never enemies. Success and inner alignment were never enemies. The real conflict was always happening within. You were never meant to lose yourself trying to build your future. You were never meant to abandon your dreams just to feel safe. You were never meant to choose between protecting your soul and expanding your life. The sacred balance was always the path. A grounded soul can still be ambitious. A powerful person can still be compassionate. A deeply connected person can still maintain individuality. And a spiritually aligned person can still create abundance, success, influence, and meaningful relationships. That is the balance. And remember this. Manifestation is not about forcing life to obey you. It is about becoming internally aligned enough that your outer reality begins reflecting your inner truth naturally. The moment you stop fighting yourself, clarity returns. The moment you stop abandoning yourself, power returns. The moment you stop living in extremes, peace returns. So as this audiobook ends, do not simply admire these ideas. Apply them. Protect your energy. Strengthen your mind. Honor your intuition. Build meaningful relationships. Pursue your vision boldly. Create success without sacrificing your soul. And become the kind of person who can stand powerfully alone while still thriving deeply together. Because balance is not passive. Balance is mastery, and your challenge starting today is simple. Do not spend another year living divided against yourself. Become rooted within, then expand beyond anything you once believed possible.